But I'm also here to talk to you about my book, which I have it right here, Dreamland. It's the history of a policy, an immigration policy called the Diversity Visa Lottery. And if you aren't familiar, the lottery makes visas available to immigrants from countries that have sent relatively few immigrants to the United States. It's operated as a global lottery, and we're actually in it right now. It's taking place. The 30th permanent DV lottery is open for applications right now if you are from an underrepresented country and in need of a green card to the United States. I find it's a really fascinating policy, and there had not been too much history written about it when I embarked on my project, which was born in an internet cafe in West Africa, which is where I learned about the lottery, something that I hadn't known about, even though I was getting to be somewhat familiar with the basics of the immigration system and immigration history. We could never really be experts because of its dazzling complexity. But I saw that people were navigating to the website to apply for this lottery, and I thought, what is this? Why is this so important here? There's a history to be told. So I tell the story of the lottery in 3 parts. My book has 3 parts. And the first deals with the legislation for this policy and the reason why it happened. The reason why it happened is that a group of fairly savvy and well-positioned and yet undocumented Irish immigrants found themselves in the crosshairs of an increasingly restrictive US system. They were denied permanent visas the way that their grandparents had been able to come in rather easily, and they felt rather shut out by a system that prioritizes family ties, specific types of employment, humanitarian need, and of course, a plethora of temporary work opportunities. So they lobbied for some form of relief for independent immigrants, people without those pre-existing ties to the United States, people who just wanted to come and live their dreams. They sort of summoned imagery of a mythic understanding of the past of immigration, and I'm sure everybody involved in this conversation right now can spotlight all of the ways in which what they said was rather mythic and not true to the history, but it worked. They managed to convince policymakers that this was a noble purpose for a new visa program. And so as part of the Immigration Act of 1990, they create the Diversity Visa Lottery, a global lottery to admit people from underrepresented countries with the express purpose of creating more national origin diversity in the immigration stream. Now, the second part of my book takes a real turn because I stopped talking about these undocumented Irish immigrants who are lobbying for the policy, and I go to several countries across West Africa where the lottery arrives at a very opportune moment. So I try to detail the way that the lottery actually operates and how it works and why it's received the way that it is in places like Ghana, Cameroon, and Nigeria. And in contrast to the Irish, who find that they're especially recently shut out, post-1965, African immigrants had been long shut out, right? They hadn't had the opportunities to develop those family ties that might enable people to immigrate in the present. And so this offer of a green card to the United States has real appeal. This is also an era of increasing immigration restrictions around the world in the aftermath of decolonization. And so I tried to situate the lottery, which begins in 1994, in this sort of post-colonial, post-independence moment in some of these countries where some of the promises about what being a citizen of a newly independent African nation might mean have sort of begun to ring hollow as state services are gutted. There's a sense that there are shrinking opportunities, that states are extractive and not serving the needs of citizens. And so emigration, the need to leave to make a decent living, to have a good future, to flourish, really takes on this new salience. And there's all of these ideas that you have to go abroad to seek greener pastures. Not everybody emigrates, of course, but that it takes on this really particular valence in this era. And the lottery aligns perfectly with how people are thinking about immigration, that you need to leave in order to succeed and live a good life. So I talk about all kinds of things like the role of luck and the role of chance, the role played by plucky individuals who try to sell visa services and sort of get in on the action and make a living around the need for migration related services. And I also situate that with a sense of the global marginalization that Africans are feeling, even when they go to the US consulate to get a visitor's visa or a tourist visa. They're turned away, they pay their fees, and they're turned away with no explanation at very, very high rates. The third part of my book sort of returns to the US along with those who are winning the lottery and settling here, and tries to make sense of shifting debates about immigration since the 1990s. As we see greater and greater resources poured into enforcement, we know that these enforcement mechanisms disproportionately affect Black immigrants. And how does that sit alongside a lottery that invites Africans to come and play? I write about the role of, shifting priorities around national security, defining the US as a homeland, which is itself kind of an antithetical concept to even the mythic version of the nation of immigrants. And so we find ourselves in a country that very quickly goes from rejecting zero-sum thinking and prioritizing the admission of immigrants just because of the diversity that they'll bring, to a country that treats a wide swath of immigrants, people with and without status, with temporary status, with greater and greater hostility. So I try to tell in this book a kind of ranging global story about US power and the way that that touches people's lives and people's dreams. And, the way that still, I think this lottery has in it this idea of a dreamland. It's not real, but it's a kind of an appealing fantasy, this idea that there could be a place, right, where you can go and thrive.